Yeah, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, especially because this particular panel is about a topic that I know me and Jaxler both care about very much, and we have a lot of opinions about it. We've had several conversations about, our mental health when it comes to speedrunning, the marathon scene, whether it's just leaderboard culture, speedrunning culture, marathon culture, and how it affects each and every individual person. So, I guess introductions to who we are. I'm Ozmourn. Oh, you want to go first?
No, I was just going to say, who's this guy?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm Ozmourn, and I have been part of the speedrunning scene since 2020. It became like a pandemic hobby for me, and I've been doing various different speedruns of a variety of games ever since 2021. I had started watching GDQ events since SGDQ 2020 online, and generally speaking, I am now much more involved in the marathon scene, both as an organizer and volunteer for several events. And so the perspective that I'm coming at is when it comes to taking care of your mental health, it's more than just, running the game. It's also being involved in community, being involved in marathons, like wanting to show off your games in marathons. And because then that's kind of what we expanded this panel to be about, not just like straight speedrunning the game, but also how does, the marathon scene and the culture behind it affect us, and when we want to submit our stuff to events, and all that. So that's a brief introduction to me, Jaxler.
Hi, I am Jaxler. As of, April, I've been speedrunning for a decade now. And so I got my start in 2015 with GB Robo and SpongeBob speedrunning, and people have been stuck with me ever since. So when I was in middle school, I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, and I also deal with a lot of chronic illness issues as well, with things like type 1 diabetes, recovered from Lyme's disease as well. So a lot of what I'm interested in talking about, and what I love to talk about with people, is kind of like the intersection of both the physical side and the mental side when it comes to like the mental health aspect. How do you take care of your body? How do you mentality-wise approach things when you're either speedrunning or the moments when you aren't speedrunning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but that definitely makes sense. And part of that is part of some of the reasons we're going to be talking about this today. And so I have a few small things here to talk about, and this panel isn't going to be like your typical panel. We don't have slides. We don't have anything that's flashy or visual to add to this. Because of the serious nature of this panel, we want it to be like a more conversation-style panel that we can have directly with the audience, hence why we have a mic right there in case you want to ask your own questions. We have questions here, but I encourage all of you to ask your own questions, and we do have a sensitive subject matter warning on the bottom of the screen next to the title of the panel, and so that does give you a little bit more permission to, openly talk about something that might be a little bit more sensitive in this space. But I wanted to open up with a pretty general question that me and Jaxler can both answer, where it's like, what is one thing that is in the speedrunning scene, whether it's in marathons or speedrunning scene in general, that you see that just needs to change when it comes to speedrunning and how it affects people and their health in the community?
Oh, you really handed me a loaded grenade there with that first one.
Exactly.
Something that needs to change.
I have my answer, and I'd be interested in hearing yours.
Yeah. So are we talking like specifically to speedrunning and like, or like, okay, let me think. I'm trying to, because I have some hot takes.
Yeah, I could share my answer while you think of yours.
Go for it.
Yeah. So one thing that I think needs to change in the speedrunning community is the concept of grind culture. 100%. I think that we need to step away from the idea that if you want to be good at a game, you have to spend 8+ hours a day grinding it. Mainly because that's not feasible for a person. But even if it is feasible for a person, it drains your health a lot. Like spending your days doing that, and even if it's something that you love, if you spend an egregious amount of time doing it, you're going to be drained emotionally, and you're going to reach burnout faster than like people who space it out normally would. A lot of people make the joke that like, we should split leaderboards between people who are employed and people who are unemployed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
and-
that is a big truth, though, is
Yeah.
that a big determinant factor in who is at the top of the leaderboard is not only who has the time to spend doing it, but also who has the resources to be able to do it, right? Because that is, you're taking time speedrunning that you could be spending building relationships or spending time with your family, your friends in person, right? And, you know, not everybody has a life optimized to whatever success at the top of a leaderboard is,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing too is like being at the top of the leaderboard, like doesn't, I'm not gonna say it doesn't matter, but it does matter, but it also doesn't matter. Because like for me, for example, a lot of the games I run are what people call cousin games, which is like those games that your cousin had growing up and you're like, I barely remember that off the top of my head, right? So I play stuff like SpongeBob and Neopets the Darkest Fairy. And you know, it's like, yeah, like, oh, I have a record in Neopets the Darkest Fairy, and it's like, that's cool, but also like, who cares? You know? I care because it means something to me, but at the end of the day, like, there's this mythologizing that happens about the idea of
the glorification of having a world record.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because again, we made up the rules with speedrunning. We
Yeah.
all agreed to a thing, and the speedrun.com page is just kind of this thing there to show people what we've been doing, right? So I totally agree. There definitely needs to be a paradigm shift on that front, but it's also like that's kind of how the way things have been seen for so long with speedrunning, because I think part of it is how do you sell, you know, just to explain where that comes from, like how do you sell speedrunning to people who don't even know what that is or what video games are even. It's like, it's like XYZ sport. And or like XYZ activity. And those activities have different cultures and different contexts. And then because of that comparison, it then bleeds into how people might view speedrunning, right?
100%. And I honestly feel as though like people compare it too much to the people who are like who are huge streamers and who like for a living speedrun. There are very few people in the world who do that, and like they've constructed their lives in a way where they can grind a game for 8 hours a day in a way that doesn't kill them, you know, in the process. And so that's important to note because a lot of people see those huge streamers or they see people who take the time out of their day to do it, and they don't realize the toll that it really takes on a person's mind and body in order to consistently be doing the same activity over and over again.
Yeah.
And you can just tell that to like anyone who works in any job that you have to do the same thing over and over again. Like just because it's like on your computer and you're doing a game doesn't mean it doesn't take like a huge mental toll on yourself to continuously do something for that long without taking breaks. Did you find a specific answer?
And I guess it kind of ties into what we've been talking about, where I think as a community we need to redefine what success is in speedrunning, because I think, you know, speedrun. So for context, I come from the world of the sport of swimming, right? And in swimming, especially in the Midwest where I grew up, I would be maybe 16, 17 years old and getting my butt handed to me on a silver platter by 13-year-olds by like 30 seconds to a minute in like the major strokes, right? And so like as a result, you kind of have to focus on your own deal, and like your success is tied to being a more improved person than you were than when you woke up that morning, right? And speedrunning is already kind of leans into that in a very similar way, because you have your own time. You can compare and see what you can work on and what your progress is, right? It's very granular in that sense, right? But in terms of the final destination, if you will, which, you know, that could be a whole nother topic, right? I think a lot of people have the default assumption of like that world record being like the thing is like, oh, once I get here, I'm done. Because I'll tell you what, as somebody who has set records before, I can count on, well, how many hands do we have? I'm gonna need a lot of hands to count this. The amount of times where I have gotten a time where it's like, oh my gosh, someone is like, oh, you got record, and I'm like, I'm not happy about it, because there were XYZ mistakes on it. And these things are allowed to change over time, right? Because your goals in speedrunning might change from when you start the hobby to when you get further into it, to where you get to someone like me who's been doing it for 10 years. You know, when I got into speedrunning, it was this thing that I could do that nobody else in the world could do.
Yeah.
But to me, that isn't a priority anymore. My priorities have changed to community building and pushing a game enough so that the next generation has this cool thing to work with and work on, right?
Yeah, and I think that I want to touch a little bit more on what you said about like redefining the goals and redefining like what success means, particularly because at the end of the day, the goals that you have in the community should be your own and not like whatever arbitrary standard that a community or the culture has imposed on you for what they believe success is. A lot of people think if you're not getting a world record, then like what's the point? Like if you need to keep going until you like get world record, but like I don't know, second place is just as good too, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
or there are people out there who just define success as
Like,
I learned how to do the speed run
Exactly.
and I finished one. I mean, shoot, there are speed runs out there that are so difficult that the fact that you finished one at all is the achievement.
exactly.
Right?
And I think that that's something that needs to be focused on more in the community because and I also think that the idea of like casual speedrunning needs to be a little bit more normalized where it's just like you can just do a run for fun. Like you don't need to be competing with anyone. You don't even need to submit to your time to the leaderboard. But I think that the culture behind leaderboard culture and speedrunning culture as a whole has kind of imbued this idea where there is an inherently competitive aspect of speedrunning that is in whatever you do. And sometimes that's healthy. Sometimes that is healthy. Sometimes if that's what you want, there is a healthy way to do that. But generally speaking, that is not anywhere near what the truth needs to be, right? Because you can just do a speedrun because you want to. You don't need to do and that is it. You don't need to be involved in the community. You don't need to be involved in the leaderboard.
Yeah.
You don't need to be competitive in any way, shape, or form that you don't see fit. And I feel like imbuing the idea that we need to be competitive, that we need to keep always striving for more kind of deal, and that wherever you are, you need to keep improving, that is something that needs to be eradicated immediately.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into what I said earlier about grind culture, where it's just like you can, like having those things combined together, where it's just like you constantly need to be improving and grinding and like working on something. It speaks a little bit to like capitalism, where it's like
I was about to say.
Capitalism believes that you always need to be productive and doing something and contributing to society
growing.
and growing.
Always growing.
Yeah.
Regardless of what the output actually is that
Yeah.
gets put on the table.
And so that mindset is kind of like going into speedrunning and has been in speedrunning for a while, where it's just like you just constantly need to be improving. When in reality, you can just choose to stop.
Yeah.
And like that's great. And like the activity, like whatever you're doing, you can stop whenever you want to. And whatever achievement you have brought up to that point is just as good as the achievements that other people have gotten. It's just as good as like any other achievement there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you don't.
Something I want to emphasize as well is that for a large part of speedrunners as well, if you choose that you don't want to keep doing this anymore, or if your goals change, people are always happy that you showed up. People are always happy that you just show interest and just care enough to build bridges and be a part of community. Like so many friends that I've made at these IRL events have just been wandering around this practice room behind you and just watching other people play whatever game it is that they're working on or messing with, and just striking up a conversation like, hey, what are you working on right now?
Exactly.
Right? Because people in this community, and what makes speedrunning so special, is people here don't care about what you are or what you do, they care about who you are.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
And
right?
being able to focus more on that aspect of the community is something going to do wonders for people's mental health, because being able to remove your mind from the prison of just constantly trying to self-improve is like a very freeing aspect, I would say. And so we have, before we started this panel, before we planned for this panel, we had a little bit of a survey online via Google form where people could ask questions themselves. We have one question here from Nyan Tiger, two questions from Nyan Tiger, as a matter of fact, and one question from wonderful MTG Joe D.
Okay.
And we're going to start with the two questions from Nyan Tiger here. The first question being, how do you deal with feeling overwhelmed by wanting to start speedrunning, especially for popular games?
Okay, so this is complicated for me to answer because I don't run popular games.
Oh, that's true.
That's like half of my personality. So when it comes to I like to talk about speedrunning as learning how to learn, if that makes sense. And so a lot of the ways that you go about, like think about studying or learning apply really, really well to the field of speedrunning. So like you see a lot of success with like musicians coming into speedrunning or like, you know, students of anything really. And so when it comes to something that's like really popular, which also tends to be really heavily optimized, first of all, kind of what I talked about with the just doing a run being the first goal and calling that the success, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Because you're doing something that not a lot of other people can do. So like in my case, for example, it's like I've been getting into weightlifting recently, and you know I do it with my dad, and he's like, you know, not too many people can just pull a 30 or 40-pound dumbbell off of the rack and do XYZ thing with it for a couple reps,
Yeah.
like, right? It doesn't. To you, it might seem like this thing that like, oh, I should be able to do this, or like, oh, this is like the easiest thing, but it's like, if it were that easy, wouldn't everyone be doing it?
Yeah.
And the answer
You need
is,
to
it's
celebrate.
not easy.
You need to celebrate the little victories as on the way
Yeah.
there. Like you can't be focusing on the whatever ultimate goal that you are achieving is, because chances are you're not going to get to it quite as fast as you may want to. Your improvement might not go exactly the way you want it to be going.
Yeah.
And so being able to focus on like the little victories on the way there, like sometimes I get like a 1 second PB, and the only thing that's keeping me from breaking it all down is just being like, hey, a win's a win.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like a win's a win. Like you got a PB somehow. Or even in a run that didn't PB, like I got golds.
Yeah.
Like that's really good. Being able to celebrate little victories on your way to whatever goal you're ultimately
Yeah.
achieving, if you choose to go for it, like that will really help you go.
Yeah.
Like continue with a game, especially if it's really popular and optimized. I would say.
The other thing too is no matter what, if you spend time playing the game, regardless of the output, you have improved, right? Because especially for something like a platformer, like a Mario 64, every little bit of time you spend with the controller in your hand just moving around gets you more and more ingrained with the physics and like the system of the game, right? And you know that's something that comes into play, especially when you're someone like me who's been running games for a long time. Is when I started running games, it felt really impenetrable, even for games that didn't have a lot of runners, because I didn't understand how. I didn't have the skill of feeling out game systems, right? And if you're coming into it for the first time, you know, you don't have that kind of like reference point or roadmap to work with, right? So there's that aspect. And going back to kind of the learning component, I think a strategy that can be really helpful too is the idea of chunking. So taking little components of it, of like the run or the route, and working on those and only working on those bits for a given day or practice session. So like for example, if you're trying to learn, I don't know, Mario 64 16 star, maybe the first thing you do is just learn the first star and you just keep working on that, right? It isn't gonna necessarily feel as emotionally or narratively satisfying, but
yeah.
starting small allows you to actually, so when you chunk information, and there's studies about this that I can probably find people if they're interested, but
Yeah.
when you chunk out information that you are trying to ingrain into your brain, it does better for retention and for like just actual understanding of the concept if you take it in those small pieces. If you try to learn too much all at once, then you're not gonna remember any of it. You just aren't.
Yeah.
Like I was teaching someone Neopets in the practice room earlier today, my buddy Dan, and I specifically made sure we only worked up to a certain point because I knew, not that any other time in the game would have been for naught, but I knew he wasn't going to remember any of it.
No, yeah, and that's important to keep in mind, especially because I've been a victim of that, where it's just like I will learn this entire run, and sometimes that works. Very rarely does it work though. It's much better to do it piece by piece, and so that. And one other thing that I want to focus on with this question, it says, especially for popular games, and one thing about that is like I completely understand where that's coming from, because sometimes I look at a game that I think is cool and then I look at the leaderboard and it has like 1,000 players and I'm just like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I am like, I don't want to invest time in something that's already incredibly hyper competitive, because I know that in my mind I'm going to feel the need to like meet up to that expectation of competition, and that's going to like, you know, like consume so much of my mental energy and time. And like a really good example of that is Ultra Kill. Like I think Ultra Kill is a really good speedrun, but like when I look at the world record and when I look at how many people are on the boards doing ILs, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to commit to that. Like it's a lot. But and that's just me. That's just me personally. So like sometimes I just don't think I could commit to certain things because it's gonna take too much of mental health. And if you decide that that's the case, then that's also perfectly fine. Like there are several games out there that you would love to see. But let's take a different approach to that. Let's say that like you want to speedrun a game like Super Mario 64 and you see that it's really competitive and hyper optimized and stuff like that. But let's pretend for a moment that no one else in the world runs the game. Like, would you do it then? If the answer is yes, then like what's really stopping you is like that sense of competition, that like sense of being too involved in competition or have it be too optimized. And that kind of just goes back to what we were saying earlier, where it's just like you can make your own goals. You can make your own goals and you can segment stuff. There are ways to approach it to where like the competition isn't really a factor for you, at the very least starting out, right?
Another really good thing to do on a similar note, especially in a more popular speed game like that, start with a meme category. Honestly, low key, start with like, so like for example, Mario 64 has like all signs where you talk to every signboard in the video game, which is dumb, but at the same, and you're like, oh well, no one cares. No, it's you care. It's funny.
It is
and
funny.
it's fun, and it's more approachable that way, right? Because it's like there's that amusement factor to it, and it's like you're finding ways to make this more work for you better,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And something I want to like before we even go anywhere else, I want to say as well, you do not have to play a popular game in order to feel like a part of the speedrunning community.
Yeah.
And that's on God, okay?
That's on God.
And something to, you know, with even with smaller communities, like obviously like the competition aspect will be different, but with a community like Mario 64, like you're not going to get to meet all the Mario 64 people because there's just too many of them. But for a lot of the smaller and mid-sized games, there's a real chance that you can make like anywhere from like a handful of friends to like 20 to 30.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, for those smaller scenes, they are so supportive in that regard, right?
They really are, and I think that that's an important aspect of a community to have. And this is just a really good question in general, because I definitely have seen and have experienced that feeling of just being too overwhelmed by how many people are running a game, how optimized it's become, and I definitely enjoy that solution of just like learning a meme category, because there are these certain like we kind of glorify like the main categories of a game a little bit, because you're like, well, Breath of the Wild any percent, that's like a huge category that so many people are running because they want to beat their favorite game as fast as possible, right? But like, what if you did like, you know, Rake in a Lake, you know?
Yeah,
just
or
put a Rake
All
in a
Dog
Lake,
Treasures,
or All Dog
or-
Treasures, or like something that's less competitive and something that you could probably sink your teeth into, because it'll teach you all of the fundamentals, and it'll teach you all the strats that like you would use in bigger categories, but it's for a category that like less people run, so the stakes in your mind are like lower.
The other thing too is it also solves the problem that is fixed by running games that not a lot of other people run, where it's like there will be more likely to be category specialists for these weirder niche categories in these larger games, so you're more likely to find people to connect with, because again, like I was talking about earlier, you show up and you show interest, and then people get excited and want to connect with you.
Yeah.
And that connection, that human connection, is the most important thing to
It really
doing
is.
any of this healthily.
It is. It definitely is. That being said, of course, if the community around your game is like a bad community and toxic, you can separate the game from the community, and you can find connection in other ways. Maybe you find someone who like likes the game but isn't part of the speedrunning community, and you can bond over that, or just adjacent communities within that space. And so like that's something that we need to keep in mind as well. And as Doctor said, the community aspect of speedrunning, I think, is something that really holds a lot of people together when it comes to not letting the mental health aspect overwhelm them. And so one other question here we have is, how important is balancing schedules and time in maintaining good mental health as a speedrunner, especially when it relates to streaming regularly? I think that balancing schedules and time is one of the most important things you can do for yourself and your mental health, especially for a person who is like me, where I am doing much more than just speedrunning in the space. I am organizing, I'm volunteering, I'm like trying to do community engagement stuff. involve myself in the community as much as possible, but also realize to take time for yourself. And so being able to manage that is something that it took me a long time to learn. And so and also when you need help from someone in the community, whether it's just someone to talk to, someone to relax with, or you need help on like a project that you're doing in the space, you should ask for it. Like you should almost always ask for it. Actually, I would argue that you should always ask for it. Because being able to realize that like you're only one person, you can only do so much by yourself. Even when it comes to like learning something, like you can't pick up a game and just learn everything off the bat based on like you could have the best video tutorial in the world, but then like you just keep doing it. You just keep doing the trick over and over again based on what you see in the video. And it's just not the same as like someone maybe explaining it to you in real time, in which they can see your movements, they can see how you're like moving your controller.
Or holding the controller.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so having people who can like show off those specifics for you is really, really well. And so being able to ask for help when possible and just being able to maintain a schedule in general, and not like you don't have to like sit down and write down all the times you're going to be speedrunning for the day or doing anything like that, but just understanding that like, hey, if you've had like a really long day and like you're tired and you're physically tired and like you don't want to speedrun, you can listen to your body and just not speedrun that day. And that can come with its own difficulties because you're like, oh, but this is another day that I'm not spending grinding on the run, and like I want to improve, especially if you have some sort of deadline. Maybe you want to like participate in an event or like want to show this off because you think it's a really cool run and you want to learn it. But at the end of the day, like what's more important is being able to physically like handle it and being able to parse time for yourself along with your speed run, being able to dedicate time for yourself. And this is another reason why I want to just abolish grind culture in general. Like that's only possible if you don't, if you aren't overwhelming your time with speedrunning and grinding constantly.
Yeah, and the thing you have to understand as well is that there is a bit of diminishing returns to the amount of time that you spend in a given day. I think a lot of times it's more about the consistency of at least finding a little bit of time every day rather than, oh, I found 4 hours here, but then no time over here, right? And I'm coming at this from the perspective of being one of the most disorganized people on planet Earth. And I will just have these swells of energy where it's like, okay, I'm playing for 6 hours because some sort of mood swing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's like, on the other hand, sometimes it is beneficial to you in the long run to be like, okay, today is not the day where this run is going to happen. Or if I continue to play and practice, it's just not going to be beneficial to me. So at that point, it can be the better play in a lot of ways to just take that step back and be like, okay, let's reevaluate the way that I'm approaching this right now. Or it could even just be taking a break. Like there have been so many times where I have stepped away from a game that I have been speedrunning to work on another speedrun project, only to come back like months later and like for some reason like already be like revved and ready to go, right? And part of that is because of what I was talking about earlier with the learning how to learn and like getting used to picking up on systems and how things operate, right?
Because there's this huge phenomenon where it's like you are grinding for a specific PB or a world record constantly, and like you just can't get it. You like put down the game for like a month, and then like your first or second run back, you just got the world record that you wanted. Like that goes to show how beneficial those types of breaks are to getting you to where you want to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did you want to mention something else?
I think that was about it. So.
All right. We have a question here from MTG Joe, who says, what are some strategies folks use to manage the anxiety that comes with doing a live run? I'm doing my first main stage run this weekend, which I feel like I should be on cloud 9 about, but the anxiety is kind of crippling. I've done plenty of other kinds of live events in front of crowds, but none of my normal techniques for dealing with this anxiety seem to be working. Mm-hmm. Which I understand because MTG Joe is also one of our hosts who have hosted for us in the past. Yeah. So they're no stranger to performance, that's for sure.
Yeah, I just want to start off by saying that if whatever strategies that you've developed or what's worked for you before isn't working now, like you haven't failed or like it's going to, like, if that makes sense, right? Because it's like context matters for all of these things, right? Like a GDQ run is so much more of a different thing than something like, like an online marathon, like something you run, for example.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing that here's my general like thing that I tell most first time runners is that the first when the timer starts and the first maybe minute to 5 minutes of gameplay are going to be the most nerve-wracking thing ever because we're anxious people and doing something like that in front of people is vulnerable and terrifying, right? But something will happen within those first 5 minutes, which is called making a mistake, right?
Yes.
And once you make that mistake and realize one of two things, which is either nobody noticed because you know the game better than everybody else does, or they don't care and they're having a good time anyway,
Yeah.
you allow yourself then to be imperfect. You allow yourself to be like, okay, I made a mistake. This is no longer a perfect run. It kind of, in a way, unlocks your brain and gives you that freedom to just be in the moment and enjoy that. And I know that's really,
Definitely.
Rich coming from me that's done this a lot
No,
before.
Yeah, I get it.
But the thing you have to keep in mind as well, especially if you've gotten to the point where you've done a game enough to be able to submit it to a GDQ and then successfully get it in, if you've prepped and played the game enough going into that, the analogy I like to use is if you're driving a car on the highway, you're not always constantly thinking about the fact that your hands are holding onto the wheel and that you're constantly in the act of driving a car. Sometimes you'll zone out, right? Or you'll just think about something.
Yeah.
And it's not even like you're necessarily processing vision at that point. Maybe I have ADHD that needs to get treated. But my point is that when you're doing something like driving a car, you're not so deeply entwined in every little motion that you're doing of driving the car because you've been doing it enough to that point to get your driving license.
Yeah.
Speedrunning on the stage like that is kind of the same way, where it's like you have put in the work already. The meal was getting to the point to get that GQ run in, and this is like the icing on the cake. Like you've made this before. You've done this before.
No, yeah, exactly.
It's like at some point that will just kick in. It's not going to be like all of a sudden everything you've ever built up muscle memory wise or just all this learning how to learn stuff. That's not just going to magically disappear. You know?
Yeah.
If I take a day off from the gym, then I'm not magically going to lose like an inch around my bicep, right? That's not how it works.
That's not how it
because it is a accumulation of previous decisions and commitments.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And one thing when it comes to the anxiety that one would feel when performing, and I've felt this several times, is that it does get better after the first time you do it. However, it never goes away.
Yeah.
As someone who has hosted a lot, who has hosted before, I'm assuming that you still get a little nervous every time you go up on the host mic, right? And so it's the same thing where once you do it once, it'll get better, but the ability to have that anxiety go away is something that never really happens. At least not completely. But one thing for me personally, when it comes to my runs, is that I feel nervous, but then just know that when you are up there, as Jaxler said, you're gonna make a mistake, and you're gonna you at least go in with the expectation of making a mistake, because once that happens, and kind of once you let all expectations go of the run, you have such a better time. And especially when you're already on stage, where it's well, now I have to do this. Now you're here.
Yeah, you're stuck with them. It's the other thing too that I think is super important to know is that you are not alone up there.
Yeah.
And I know that's an obvious thing, but you have support, and you're allowed to lean in on that support.
Even if you don't have commentators, you have a host. The host will be there. And so you're not the silence is not going to be when you can't speak or when you need to focus on something. It's not going to be just pure silence. It's not going to be just all eyes on you. It's going to be on your commentators as well, on your host, on the fact that we're raising money for charity. While that moment, yes, is about you because it's your run, 100% of the attention isn't always on you specifically, right? And so that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah.
And so, and me and Jaxler have across between the two of us, we've done 20
ish
GDQ runs, or give or take. And so we are definitely no strangers to this feeling. We are definitely no strangers to how how nervous people can get. It is part of the reason why when I submit to marathons, I only ever record my voiceover over my current PB. The reason that I do that is because when I try to do a live run and record it and like play as I'm commentating, then I will feel the need to be absolutely perfect because I know that I can just stop the recording and start again if I mess up. And so that's something that, and it just causes me so much anxiety and so much need to be perfect that I'm just like, I'm not dealing with this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not. So I just record over my PB. But then when I get up on stage, I don't feel that same need to be perfect because I'm there. I can only do this once, and I've let go of every expectation that I could possibly have about the run. Like,
Yeah.
you just have to go up there and do it, and at that point, it's just you just have to deal with
Yeah.
whatever is there.
Yeah, and I think as kind of like as a way to put a bow on this, like instead of like thinking about it as like this like being like nervous. I know it's easy to say just don't be nervous, but it's like in a way like I would almost frame it as this is an incredible opportunity for me to experience and learn how to do something like this at this level of stakes for the first time. Right? Because handling those nerves and being up there and pushing through that is a skill. And you've been granted this opportunity to take part in that, right? So in a way, the way that's helped me, and it might not work for everyone, but reframing it as an opportunity, right? Because an opportunity, whether or not it goes the greatest it'll ever go or not, you have an opportunity to gain information, understanding about yourself, and just an opportunity for something that's potentially really fun and awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
And you're gonna feel scared, and so do it scared.
Yeah, do it.
Do it. Yeah, that's why you should do it because like having that experience of like going through something that's gonna make you nervous, it's gonna feel so much better when you're done doing it.
Yeah.
And it's gonna feel like an amazing experience.
You're going to grow so much, and that's what's exciting about it. You just have to, and that's what's awesome about it.
One thing that if you want like techniques for like how to manage your anxiety, I do have a few that my therapists have taught me. And one thing that has worked a lot is like standing up and then just doing like a Superman pose with your body like this. Hold on, like that. And just holding that. And then just like holding that position for like around like at least like 40 seconds. Because being able to do that and have like your chest out and like being in that confident pose is kind of like helps you regain a little bit of confidence in yourself.
It also opens like your chest up and kind of reduces some of the restriction on your lungs and your diaphragm being able to get oxygen moving. And that deep breathing is one of the most important ways of like working with that anxiety stuff, right? So like in a way, by bringing those shoulders back, you're kind of, if you've ever seen like somebody run like a lap around a track and then you see them with their shoulders up over the behind their head, that's why they're doing that actually.
Yeah.
It's a similar mechanism for helping them to get air through their system to reduce that cortisol. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a technique that's worked for me. If you want like an answer what you can physically do. We have about 20 minutes left, and so I do have some questions in case like no one has questions, but I do want to open up to the audience and have a little bit of time to answer any questions that y'all may have. We do have a mic right there. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask us, whether it's our personal experience or any question in general?
Yeah.
Doing,
I see Ashley right there.
Ashley, if you come up
If
to
you
the mic.
don't mind coming to the mic, that would be great. And
This
then
is,
we'll repeat the question for the broadcast.
This is Ashley93OBTW, who ran Control for us on Tuesday.
How do you deal with marathon rejections?
Marathon rejections.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
How do we deal with marathon rejections?
That's a great question. And it's one that I've definitely learned to deal with a lot in the past, because, and it's weird. And it's weird to say this because like I understand that I'm like in a very privileged place. We understand that we're in like a very privileged place and that like we've been accepted to GDQ events multiple times, and there's a lot of people who haven't. And so, but I will say the rejection still hits hard. And it's been a work in progress for me because I'm the kind of person who loves to go up there and perform and who loves to perform for people and like have this skill that I'm good at and like being able to show that off and also raise money in the process. Like doing that is very fulfilling for me. But then when you submit a run to an event and you get rejected, it's like, well, then what did I do wrong? You know, that's the trap that I've fallen into, where I immediately think that it's a reflection on me. I immediately think it's a reflection on, did I not do good enough at the run? Is my game not good enough? Am I not good enough as a performer? Like those are the traps that I fall into.
Yeah.
But as someone who has organized events and has been on the other end of the table, I can think of like very rare instances in which I rejected a run because of the runner. And usually if I reject it because of the runner, it's because the runner is like problematic or like has been like shown to like not be like entertaining at all on the stage, or could have trouble or
Yeah,
when we
like,
work with them, right?
like if you have the personality of wet paper, there's not all that much you can do. But it's like, at the same time, the thing with submitting anything is that, and this is something that I've dealt with a lot, is that you can do everything right, and it just doesn't go your way because there's just so much submission volume.
Yeah,
Right. So it's
exactly.
like, but rejection also is a hard thing to like deal with as a thing. So to me, in a way, it kind of goes back to my goals. I think, and maybe this kind of goes back to that question of what's something that should change about the speedrunning culture, is that the final goal should not be that GDQ run.
No.
Like, obviously, it is a great goal to have, to want to be up on that stage and show the game off and like have that moment. It is a really
Yeah.
awesome thing. But that shouldn't be the only thing, and that shouldn't be the center of your focus. And I've been very guilty of that, of making that the center of my focus and burning myself out
Definitely.
to try to put myself in that best position possible. So again, it goes back to redefining success. Like GDQ,
Yeah.
getting into GDQ, that is success. But there are other things that we can also work on at the same time, so we can also set ourselves up for moments of success at the same time,
Yeah.
right? Because if you get rejected from something and then you haven't been moving the needle on anything else, then it's going to hit that much harder, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being able to have multiple points of success in your life and multiple things you can measure for success, and measuring your success not off of achievement but rather off of growth, is something that is very important, and something that I am still learning to do. I'm not going
Yeah.
to sit here and tell you that I've figured it out, because if part of me gets rejected and still feels it hard. However, sometimes it can be a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because I can tell you right now, I submitted for this GDQ, and this is the first GDQ in person that I've been going to where I got flat out rejected, and I did not get a run. And however, I can tell you right now that this GDQ and my experience at it was infinitely better and probably more important to me than any experience that I had at last AGDQ 2025, where I ran a run. And like that's it. Like the experiences that you get in this community, there's so much more that you can measure your success or your happiness or your like experience on than being up on that stage and being a runner. Like I commentated for Jaxler's run, and it was one of the funnest times I ever had, like commentating for anything. And that opportunity to like be there, it's like really fulfilling in and of itself.
Yeah.
And so it does go back to redefining success and being able to find success and victory in what you do have. But another thing is like, Satan and Shovelclaws hosted a panel earlier this week about like how to improve your submission videos for events, right? And there's typically always something you can improve on. Like there's never a perfect submission video. Like there's usually something that you can improve on, whether it's like maybe your presentation style or maybe like being more skilled at the game, whatever the case may be, right? However, as someone who has been on the other end of the table and has accepted games into my events, sometimes you just don't get in.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And it's not anything personal.
And it's not anything to do with you. Maybe you have a great run. Maybe the length is good. Maybe you're a really good performer. But maybe we just had that game at last event. Maybe we think that another game floats a little bit better with what we already have. You know, maybe we did accept the game and we just couldn't find a place on the schedule for it, and so we just rejected it.
We had to cut it, you know?
Yeah. Like there's 1,000 reasons why you could have gotten rejected, and a lot of them maybe have nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Because a lot of times a rejection is not a pass-no thing, and it's impossible to really know that without someone explaining it to you, because a lot of times it's like we'll have like a bin of like games that we really want on the schedule, and then there's a series of cuts that have to be made. but you don't see that series of cuts per se. All you're seeing is like the final, rejected, backup, accept, right? So in some ways, you don't have the data available to you to be able to logically say like,
Yeah.
oh, it's not like you,
Of course.
because you don't have that information, like you have to approach it in such a way where it's like, I can't fully feel like I can draw XYZ conclusion from it because I don't have all the information because it's not always public.
Definitely. And that's not necessarily to negate, the information that Satan and Claus gave in their panels, because
Yeah.
it's really good. It's really good. And you have ways to improve your submission videos and
Yeah.
make it more likely that you get accepted to events.
And it also does not dismiss the fact that you feel the way you do about getting rejected.
Exactly.
Because it still sucks.
it still sucks.
I will
And
say as well that being rejected has been one of the biggest fuel sources for me, right? Because I think sometimes we talk about like negative emotions like anger and sadness as like an inherently negative thing, where they're just chemical reactions that our brains produces, and it's a matter of what we do with those emotions that really determines whether or not they're good or not. So like for me, for example, when I've been rejected in the past, I would allow myself to feel that emotion of rejection, but then at some point I would be like, okay, I am going to prove them wrong because I know deep down that they missed out.
yeah.
And whether or not I actually believe that in that given moment is a total toss-up.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
confidence is like a roller coaster, right? But like, even if you feel like you're telling a lie to yourself, like you just have to say it.
Yeah.
Because then you can take that emotion and turn it into something actionable, right? Because just stewing in it doesn't help you.
Exactly. And so both things can be true. You can always improve on like your presentation and what you want to submit and put your best foot forward when it comes to speedrunning. But ultimately, sometimes you just don't get in because of nothing to do with you. And both things can be true. And one good example of that was a games committee that I was the head for and that I submitted to that event. And we all agreed that we kind of wanted a run that I put in. But then I was building the schedule, and I was just like, I can't for the life of me figure out where I want to put my run. So I just cut out my own run from my own schedule. Like, I just didn't include it because I couldn't figure out where to put it in a way that made sense to me. Because that's a factor that people put into scheduling, where it's just like you want games. You don't have to have perfect flow or anything like that. Like sometimes GDQ goes into like an RPG, into like a puzzle game, into like a Mario game, and like that's fine. But you still want some stuff to flow well with each other if you can make it happen. And sometimes I look at a game on the schedule and I'm just like, this is a really good run, but I just can't figure out where to put it in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it gets cut out of the schedule on that basis alone. I've done it with my own runs before.
Yeah.
And so you need to keep stuff like that in mind, where
Exactly.
it could literally have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Like, and will everything that we're saying up here cure the pain that you might feel when you get rejected? No. But it might help you.
Hell no, it won't.
Yeah, it won't. It hasn't for me.
No.
But at the very least, you might be able to cope with it a little better, knowing those
or
things.
at least leverage it in some way, or use it as a springboard towards whatever you want your next step to be, right? And that's gonna be probably something I say a lot, is just like, how do I take this thing that is affecting me negatively and leverage that to make things better, or make myself better, or achieve XYZ next step, right? Because there's always opportunities with any given thing life throws at your way.
Exactly.
So
we have 10 minutes left. We want to keep opening up for more questions. Tayton, one of our hosts and someone who ran Plants vs. Zombies on Monday night.
All right, two things. First of all, that panel was not quite on submission videos. It was on making a better charity run, but it still does
Gotcha.
apply. Still does apply.
sorry for the misinformation.
No worries. I wanted to ask the exact opposite question because it's something I've dealt with a lot this event and also just in general. How does it feel to work with the feeling of imposter syndrome when you do get into events, or when you do consider yourself sort of a top runner and you don't think that that's, necessarily reflective of your actual substance, I suppose?
Oh, dang.
Oh, so like if you do a run and then you feel like that run really wasn't up to your expectations, or am I
That, or
misreading?
just like, okay, for example, Plants vs. Zombies, y'all brought this up. I'm a good runner. You know, I've done my homework, I've done my practice, but I'm not a top runner of
Sure.
that game.
I see.
And so getting into a mainline, you know, GDQ with that has brought up a lot of feelings. So,
understand.
you know, anything kind of related to how does it feel when you don't quite feel like you belong where you are
Yeah.
in speedrunning.
I see what you're saying. I've definitely have felt that. I remember my very first GDQ run was Antichamber in 2022, and the submission video that I used for that, I looked at it and I'm just like, I'm using outdated strats. This is like 3 minutes behind world record. This is like, I barely can hold myself together, and it got in. And I had a huge imposter syndrome because of that.
Yeah.
Because I know in my head that the only reason that I have world record in this game, and the only reason I have world record in this game is because the people that I know that can beat it in like two attempts aren't running the category.
Yeah.
Or I know for a fact that the reason that I got in is because none of the other top runners decided to submit.
Yeah.
You know? And how do we deal with that? Well, at the end of the day, it's really difficult to do because
Yeah.
you constantly compare yourself to others. But ultimately, you have to realize that like it's not inherently a competition, right? It's not a huge competition as to whether or not
Yeah.
like
Because part of it too is when it comes to events like GDQ, like your time as a runner is not the sole determiner of why runners get picked. There are oftentimes runners who get picked over faster runners because they are better performers. They
Yeah.
do a better job of being a mirror for what the game is and what the community represents, right?
Two major examples of that I can think of is when Worms Armageddon was on at AGDQ 2023, the person that ran it is the second place holder, and the person that got on backup for the same game is the world record holder. And another example of that is my very good friend Metroid Crime, who ran VVVVV at SGDQ 2023, the same year that the world record holder also submitted to that exact same event. And they chose Metroid Crime, even though Metroid Crime has a slower time than the world record holder, because Metroid Crime is a good performer. And like
Yeah.
she is good. And that's not to like say anything negatively about the world record holders for those games, but like there are clearly moments where the committee is just like, hey, we're going to choose this person because we believe that they're a better performer, or we've seen their work before, and we've decided that, you know, maybe for the health of the marathon and for health of like getting money off the ground, that we're going to go with this person, even if they're not top tier.
Yeah.
Or even if they're not the best person in the world, literally. Like,
I think another thing too is that, especially once you get to being on site, what you have to realize, whether you want to believe it or not, is you are the most qualified person to be doing the thing you're about to be doing right now, right? Whether you have 9th place or 100th, you are there and you are the most qualified person in the room or the building to be doing what you're about to be doing.
Definitely.
So, and like as a result, like, you know, it can be, there is kind of that pressure, but like at the same time, like you got picked for a reason. You are qualified. Whether you think someone is more or less qualified, that's a matter of opinion, but you are qualified. And once you're there, you are the person with the qualifications to get that job done.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about you if you're the person who got that run in. So,
Exactly.
you know, this is kind of me doing like the mental aikido of how do I wrap this around into a positive where it's
No,
like,
100%. Like, and ultimately, if you take that and you realize that there's a lot more factors than just your top time that goes into why you got accepted into something, that might help you like deal with the imposter syndrome a little bit more, because and realizing that it's all of your presentation that got in, not just your time.
Yeah.
You got in. The presentation that you brought to the table got in.
Yeah.
And realizing that will help with the imposter syndrome a lot.
Yeah.
And also the fact that I'm sorry, I got distracted by something. The fact that like maybe there is someone in the world that is more qualified to do what you're doing right now. Maybe. But like it doesn't matter. You're the person that's doing it.
Yeah.
And like you're the person that's up there on that stage doing it. Because you took the initiative to go and do it. You took the initiative to go and submit your run to the event, to take time to make your own submission schedule for the submission video for the event, and you have said that you're going to take time out of your day to make something and do something and perform for
Yeah.
this event. And maybe there is someone in the world who could do it a little bit better than you, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It
and
really
no
doesn't.
one else can do your run the way you are going to do it, right? There. A good example of this is with Pseudo Regalia, right? I did a run of that at AGDQ, I want to say 23.
24.
24.
It was it was before my run, so that's
Right,
how I know.
sorry, my bad. But like, and we just had it at this event with Wilbon doing 100%. And the way that he was able to lean into his strengths was infinitely different than the way that I leaned into mine. And so like, as a result, even though, you know, when I did my 90% run, I was, you know, maybe second or third, maybe not the fastest qualified on the leaderboard. It was like, I brought a unique experience to the table. And it's at that point, you know, it's not even about the run at that point. It's about you. This is an opportunity to be you in front of a bunch of people, right? And, you know, at that point, it's, again, less about the time, you know. And to more specifically talk about, like, the insecurity that might come with, like, not playing good on stage, I'll use a very recent example, which would be last Tuesday, when I did my Sea Frog race with Ice Swimfly. I'll be completely honest with you, I played like crap. I did, in my opinion, at the very least. But that's not what anyone told me after that run. The amount of people that I have that came up to me and told me after the run that were like, oh, that was so much fun, you did great, I had such a great time watching Sea Frog, I wishlisted the game on Steam because y'all just had such a good time with it.
Yeah.
That's all I heard after my run, right? So it's like, at some point, you just gotta like take the feedback that you're getting and agree with it at some point.
100%.
Because at some point, it's just data driven, right? Regardless of how emotionally you might feel about it.
And sometimes you look back at your run in retrospect and realize that it's like so much better than you thought it was. Mainly because like a good example of that is when I did my Gunbrella run last SGDQ in this venue. Like I went a minute and a half over estimate, and I beat myself up over that because I don't like going over estimate in marathons. But at the same time, I look back at the run and I watched it, and I'm just like, this is the best commentary I've ever given in my life.
Yeah.
Like, and so you like having that like sort of shift in idea where it's just like, I didn't like that run at first, but then I watched it back and I was just like, I performed well, like, and I like did commentary well, and so that's kind of something that you need to keep in mind as well, where it's not just the time, it's your whole personality, it's your whole performance, and maybe you have a different look at it once you look back on it after it's done.
And even when it comes to time, if you're somebody who is outside your games community looking in, nobody really has the ability to notice an appreciable difference between gameplay, between what you're doing and what a record holder is doing, or someone technically more qualified is. Like, when it comes to on the surface at the least, like, you look really goddamn good at what you're doing, right? Because people understand that speedrunning is really hard, right? Because we put a lot of work into being good at what we do, right? And just because someone has a better time than you doesn't erase the fact that you have also put a ton of work into what you have done. So
100%. And so I think that that's something that we should go home with. Do you have? I saw you put something down, and I thought you were about to walk up and ask a question. Do you have one?
go for it.
Yeah.
I just want to share some thoughts about Satan's question. I'm so glad she mentioned imposter syndrome because that's the biggest challenge I've had. I watch most of speedrun, but I don't necessarily play any of the games, like 90%. When I first met Satan at the Lady Arcade event, it didn't ring a bell with me when she mentioned Plants vs. Zombies. But that night when I watched her play, I was like, all the memories started to hit, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm watching her play.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine any other runner do that. I had like the best time. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for the run, and you did really great job.
Well, thank you for coming up and saying that.
Thank you. That's
really
that's very kind.
Yeah.
And I guess just goes to show, like, people love your runs, and so like,
Yeah.
if you have imposter syndrome, think of people who like your run like that. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Take that.
Take that. Like, that's good to take home with you if like you have doubts about like your ability or your run. Where it's just, like, you look back and you see how people loved it, and that does help cure the imposter syndrome a little bit. That's
At the end of the day, too, speedrunning is one of those activities where, like, and I've had this this is going to sound strange because I'm referencing the Neopets the Darkest Fairy community again. And I know I'm going to lose the room here a little bit, but, you know, we've had a lot of new runners come in that feel like when they've interacted with me and met me for the first time, they feel like, it's like, oh, it's this Jaxler guy who's really good. I'm like, not like weirded out, but it's like, oh, this guy is talking to me as if I'm a normal person, right? The only real difference between someone who's at the top of the leaderboard versus you is just the amount of time spent. I'm gonna be so real. That's kind of going back to that joke about unemployment that we were making earlier. Is it's just like some of it is an unemployment contest to a degree, and it's or just like a time management or like who has the resources to spend that time, right? So it's like, when you think about it, it's like, is this person more qualified than me, or did they have the more hours to get that time and grind it?
Yeah.
Right? It's not necessarily a better time as an indicator of qualification.
Yeah.
It's an indication of resources and time
How
allocated.
much time were they able to hone the craft and spend on the skill, right? And sometimes people aren't an ability to do that to maybe the level that a world record holder would.
And honing that time, getting that world record, is also time that they are not honing their skills of putting on a live speedrun showcase.
exactly.
Those are two different skills.
They really
you can
are.
be qualified for a top level time, but not be qualified for a presentation like that. And that's just God's honest truth.
100%. And so there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And so hopefully we can take that little piece of feedback home with us.
Yeah.
If you're considering submitting to events, or maybe you have imposter syndrome, or you get rejected from an event, just take all of the thoughts of those final two questions with us.
Yeah.
And being able to have more confidence in ourselves, whether we get rejected or not. But yeah, we have gone up to an hour. In a perfect world, Jaxler and I could probably sit here and talk about this for 8 hours.
Yeah.
With as many questions as we could. But
Yeah.
there's only so much time in the day, and we hope that y'all enjoy the rest of your time here at the event.
Absolutely.
And thank you to, Dana's not here, but thank you to the activities coordinator, Dana, for having us be the last panel of the event.
Yeah, this is really cool. And I've never gotten to like be an active driving force in a panel, so this means a lot. I want to mention something as well before we wrap. I'll be around for a little bit after. If you had questions you wanted to ask, if you're in the crowd, but you didn't feel comfortable coming up to a mic in front of a bunch of people to ask them, feel free to come up and talk to us, okay?
Please do. I'm gonna go pee first, but I'm gonna come back here. And then,
I may take you. I may follow suit, but we'll be around, and we're reachable as well. So it's like, that's the cool thing about speedrunning is a lot of us we're just like all of y'all, where we're nerds and we, we're just cool to talk to people as normal human beings. Although we're speedrunners, so we're not normal, but you know the vibes. You know the vibes.
We get it. But yeah, thank you all so much for being part of this panel and for just showing up. Because honestly, this is a larger crowd than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you all so much, and I hope.
Yeah, and thank you for those who asked questions as well.
Please.
Thank you for being vulnerable enough to ask those questions as well.
It means the world to us, and we hope that it helps y'all, and you can take what you learned here with you and improve your own mental health with it. And hopefully it goes even further when this goes up on YouTube and people will be able to see them themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all.
All right, enjoy the rest of GDQ, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.